Okay, in this video, in the last video I stopped with alternative 2, proof alternative 2. Now I'm going to show you proof hypercubes 2 and compare and contrast those two representations. So this is when things are going to start to get more interesting here. So the difference between alternative 2 and hypercubes 2 is that in alternative 2, if I look at the hypercubes, you'll notice that the hypercubes tend to all have almost different names. There's some that are the same, and I believe that is a mistake. I think you should have unique hypercubes for each structure that's being represented. That lets you work with things based on the name of the hypercube. So what I did in this, you see that the hypercubes all have a different, or close to it, a different name. In this representation, hypercubes 2, if I go to the hypercube, you notice that every single hypercube has exactly the same name. It's like, so what's going on there? So this is actually a rational thing to do. It does not make sense if you look at it with this hypercube view, but if you look at it with the component view, you begin to understand why the component is necessary. Standard hypercube accounting equation, standard hypercube financial highlights. So basically, the network gives the information to uniquely identify this hypercube. You can't identify hypercubes only by the name of the hypercube if every hypercube has the same name. So again, very quickly, you'll notice that again, there's 19 blocks of information, just like the last one. This one, I'm curious. Yeah, so even more. There's bugs in this software. It's not recognizing the disclosure. Actually, this may be I may be pointing to the wrong set of rules. So that's why it's not discovering. But the fact, what I really want to focus on is the information blocks. So the information blocks, the information is not changed at all, even though 19, even though the hypercubes all have the same name. So if you look at the networks, you can tell what this hypercube is. This is going to probably be the balance sheet. If you look at it, it is. And this one's going to be the statement of net assets, and it is. But this is perfectly legal. It's a rational thing to do. There are reasons why this is a good idea. Basically, you don't have to think of names of hypercubes, but it has ramifications. You can't query based on the hypercube when you take this approach. That's really the only thing that's different between the master and this proof hypercubes 2 is the fact that I use the same hypercube in each representation. So this was done by FinRep. It was a taxonomy built in the around 2005. Another taxonomy, Corp, took the approach of making every hypercube unique. So these are just two different approaches to representing information using XBRL. But again, it doesn't impact the meaning of the information. Here you still see exactly the same blocks of information, and I'm going to call that good.